Liberals fear to tread. And I want to repeat that. Fundamentalists rush in where liberals fear to tread. Now, Walzer doesn't mean liberal in the sense of voting for the Green Party. He means liberal in the sense of believing in an open society. So this is what has happened in America in the late 20th century around religion. In the absence of a responsible, proactive, intentional conversation about what has become the most religiously diverse nation in human history and what has long been the most religiously devout nation in the West, we forfeit the territory of the discourse around religion to fundamentalists of all stripes. Now, let me tell you something. As an American Muslim, I woke up on September 12th, 2001, knowing that 48 hours earlier, nobody in America was talking about Islam. And the morning of September 12th, everybody in America was talking about Islam. And what do they know about Islam? What do they know? American Muslims had, by not speaking positively and proactively about our faith in the public square, had left a vacuum. And that vacuum was not just filled by the unbelievably evil and heinous murder of 3,000 people on the morning of September 11, 2001, but Osama bin Laden had taught the world Islam 101. People's initial and most powerful reference point for what Islam was, because they knew nothing else, was that event of terrorism. Fundamentalists rush in where liberals fear to tread. If there isn't a robust conversation in America about what secular humanism or agnosticism or atheism is, how it contributes to the public square, how it is one way of orienting around religious belief, which is to say, not belief or seeking at all, well then don't be surprised when people rush in and say atheism is defined by the hatred of religion. Fundamentalists rush in where liberals fear to tread. And that's why universities are so important in this space. So when I was my final year here at the University of Illinois, I was part of a small group of student leaders who met with the president of the university system. In the mid-1990s, that was President James Stuckel. And I expected him to talk to us about the kind of natural strengths of the university in business and in engineering. I expected him to talk about technology and what was the engineering quadrant, which was just emerging at that time. He talked about those things, but he also said something that I will never forget. He said, when I shake the hand of a graduate of the University of Illinois, I want to have a reasonable degree of confidence that that graduate has acquired multicultural literacy, has built multicultural relationships, and has an opportunity for multicultural leadership over the course of their 4 years at the University of Illinois. And when I think back to my time at this university, that's precisely what happened to me. Because the university experience for an undergraduate, from soup to nuts, from the time you step foot into freshman orientation, to your Sociology 100 class, to the pep rally that the football coach spoke at, to Jesse Jackson and Maya Angelou and Henry Louis Gates Jr. being major keynote speakers in the Millercom series at this campus. It was a rich and robust conversation about race and ethnic diversity. I had built those multicultural relationships. I had acquired that multicultural literacy. I had chances to lead student groups that were diverse by race and ethnicity. Really the first chances that I had in my life. I think to myself, what if we advanced the diversity conversation one notch on college campuses? What if we had an expectation that our students, when they graduate, when they walk across that stage, when you shake their hands, you have a sense that they have acquired interfaith literacy, they have built interfaith relationships, and that they've had opportunities for interfaith leadership. What do I mean by that? That means that, to put it bluntly, people know more about my religion than September 11th. And I gotta tell you, I wish this wasn't true. but an awful lot about what I knew about black people growing up in the western suburbs of Chicago in the 1980s was what I saw in the evening news. Well, that's what it is when it comes to Muslims today. Why should you expect people who step foot on this campus, from Rantoul or Waukegan, to know something about the religion of a fifth of humankind, 1.5 billion people, other than what they see on the evening news? And is it part of a university education? Is it part of what it means to be an educated person, to have an appreciative knowledge of the great religious traditions on the planet, including secular humanism? Just like I read Toni Morrison and Ralph Ellison and Richard Wright when I stepped foot on this campus, what would it look like for there to be an educational expectation that your students had read something of the Mathnawi by Rumi, something of the Bhagavad Gita, some appreciative knowledge of different religious traditions, have some sense that different religious communities have made significant contributions to the American project, just as we in the 1990s got a sense that different racial and ethnic communities had done the same thing. That there are 230 Catholic colleges in this country, 600 Catholic hospitals, 7,000 grade schools and high schools. Urban school districts are unimaginable without the help and support of those Catholic schools in cities like Philadelphia, New York, LA, Chicago. Right? There are tens, if not hundreds of thousands of students in those Catholic school systems, at least 50% of whom are not Catholic. Part of the reason I know that is because that's where my kids go to school. The significant contributions, everything from culture to social capital to moral discourse, that is offered by the diverse religious communities in America. Sociologist Robert Putnam at Harvard says it's about 50% of American social capital that religious communities provide. What would it look like for there to be an expectation that a University of Illinois graduate has some sense of that? That when you shake their hand at graduation and you ask them, tell me something you appreciate about Buddhism, they'd be able to tell you about the Bodhisattva archetype, or tell you of their admiration of Thich Nhat Hanh, or tell you of their reading of the Dalai Lama's most recent book. I mean, I think that part of being called an educated person in the 21st century is something of that knowledge. So how do you get there? How does a university make this a part of its priority, a part of the water of its institution? So part of the way that I think about this is you set a high aspiration and you measure where you're at. And part of what's happened in American higher education over the last 20 years is that process of clear aspiration setting. We want to make sure that X percentage of our students graduate across populations. We want to make sure that Y percent of female students in the engineering program take these types of leadership positions. You set high aspirations on concrete things and you measure where you're at. Universities these days are very, very good at measuring around race, ethnicity, increasingly sexuality, right? What do people know about these? What are their various attitudes on those things? What are their relationships? What's their knowledge base? What would it look like for a university to set the same kind of aspiration around interfaith engagement and have a sense of measuring where they're at and then creating a strategy that gets from here to there? I want to tell you what I think this means for the culture. I want to tell it to you in the form of this story. January 2009, I wake up and I realize that I probably know, 40 people in the White House. And it's not because I'm that cool or that smart. It's because I went to college in the 1990s. I went to college at an inflection point in the multicultural movement. I went to college when universities like Illinois were saying, we want our students to graduate with multicultural literacy, to have multicultural relationships, to build multicultural leadership. And it's not just because it's going to improve the learning environment and civic culture on our campus. It's because we will bequeath that as a gift to the nation. And that's what my generation did. We went off to Hollywood and hedge funds, and we brought our race and ethnicity consciousness into those environments. You know, I used to watch a lot of ESPN. Now that I have a 6 and a 3-year-old, I watch an awful lot of Nickelodeon Junior. I gotta tell you something. I think I remember like a single person of color cartoon character when I was 5 years old.